At the end of the 18th century, for anyone looking at a world map, North America did not mean very much. Compared to Europe's deeply rooted kingdoms, this new country was neither an ancient empire nor a major military power. For many, it was nothing more than a temporary experiment. At the time, almost no one seriously discussed the idea that these lands would one day sit at the center of the global order. The United States of America existed not through large armies, ancient traditions, or centuries of inherited legacy, but through a potential that had yet to be clearly defined. Yet 2 centuries later, the picture had completely changed. The direction of global trade, the outcomes of wars, and even the language of money were, to a large extent, being shaped in Washington. This transformation was no coincidence. And this rise cannot be explained by military victories alone. The real question was this: did America seize power, or did it rewrite the rules of the game from the very beginning? Because some countries become powerful in history, but very few redefine what power itself actually means. To understand America's rise, one must first look at what it did not emerge from. This story does not begin in the heart of Europe, but far from its burdens. At the time, Europe was exhausted. Centuries of war drained treasuries and costly standing armies. Societies were rigidly divided into classes, and kingdoms survived on debt. America carried almost none of this legacy. When this new state declared independence in 1776, it did not copy the rules of the old world. There were no noble families, no aristocracy that derived power by birth. At first glance, this absence appeared to be a weakness. But over time, it became clear that it was an advantage, because there was no weight of the past. America's greatest strength was that it started late, and this late beginning would make far more possible than anyone expected. One of the least discussed elements of America's rise was the geography it stood upon. This continent was filled with fertile farmland, rich coal and iron deposits, long river systems, and natural ports opening to 2 oceans. Everything the industrial age required was already there. Yet history has repeatedly shown that wealth alone does not create power. What truly made the difference was how quickly and cheaply these resources could be accessed. In the 19th century, railroad networks spread rapidly across America. The rails did more than connect cities. They moved production to markets, raw materials to factories, and people toward opportunity. The commercial integration Europe had built step by step over centuries took shape in America within just a few decades. From the outside, this growth appeared flawless. But could a system expanding this quickly truly be without cost? The American Civil War, which began in 1861, was the young nation's first major test of survival. This conflict is often remembered primarily through the issue of slavery. Yet, behind the scenes, there was a far deeper struggle over what kind of country America would become. On one side stood the industrialized North, built on factories, railroads, and centralized authority. On the other stood the agrarian South, sustained by agricultural economics and defending local power and states' rights. The war was not only a clash of armies, but of 2 fundamentally different economic and political visions. In the end, the North emerged victorious. This outcome confirmed that America would be built firmly upon a system rooted in industrial capitalism. But the silence of the guns did not mean the end of problems. The war was over, but the country was now entering a far more complex era. By the end of the 19th century, America had become one of the fastest industrializing countries in the world. Steel production surged, the oil industry emerged, and large corporations took shape. This period also marked the beginning of profound inequality. As major corporations grew, the working class labored under harsh conditions. Strikes, protests, and economic crises followed. America was growing, but that growth was fragile. And that fragility would soon face a global test at the dawn of the 20th century. When the First World War began, America initially remained neutral. As Europe burned, American industry continued to produce. By the time the United States entered the war near its end, it was already strong both militarily and economically. The true rupture came with the Second World War. European cities were destroyed. Factories came to a halt. Millions of lives were lost. The American mainland, however, remained largely untouched. Throughout the war, production increased. The industries that supplied the military turned toward global markets once the fighting ended. When the war was over, the world needed to be rebuilt. And at that table, the strongest economic cards were in America's hands. In 1944, the Bretton Woods Conference was held. At this meeting, the rules of the post-war global economy were set. The International Monetary Fund, the World Bank, and a dollar-centered financial system were established. The dollar was no longer just American currency. It became the reference point for international trade. This system gave the United States influence beyond military power, a form of power built through money, trade, and debt. But like every system, this order faced a fundamental question: how long could this balance last? The Cold War years were not only a period of ascent for America, but one of preservation. Military alliances were formed, economic aid was distributed, and an ideological struggle unfolded. During this time, the United States managed to remain at the center of the global order. But this position also brought new responsibilities and new risks. Power was no longer just an advantage. It had become a burden. America's rise to global power cannot be attributed to a single war or a single leader. It was the result of choices made at the right moments, systems that were built, and opportunities that were not missed. But history has shown us this time and again, no power is permanent. What tests would the order America built face in the future? And would those tests give rise to a new global balance? To be continued in the next video.